Australia. Australia is the sixth biggest country in the world. Only Russia, China, Canada, USA, and Brazil are bigger. It is the world's largest island. Even though the country is so big, it only has about 23 million inhabitants. 88% of all Australians live in the big cities or smaller towns, which makes big areas of the country empty. Australia lies in the southern hemisphere, which means that the more south you go, the cooler it gets. In the north parts of the country it is always hot. The rest of the country has really hot summers and mild winters. Snow only falls in the Australian Alps and in Tasmania. When we have winter in Europe, the Australians have summer. So they celebrate Christmas in the middle of the summer. Australia was unknown to most people until 1770. That year the British explorer Captain James Cook arrived to the country on his ship the Endeavour. His mission was to sail to Tahiti and watch the planet Venus pass between the Earth and the Sun. Scientists needed the observations to figure out the distance between the Earth and the Sun. But Cook also had a secret mission. He was supposed to find the unknown southern continent. In April 1770, Cook reached the Australian coast and planted the British flag and claimed the land for Great Britain. The captain called the land New South Wales. For about 20 years nothing more happened with New South Wales. At the end of the 18th century and the beginning of the 19th century, many people came to the country. Poor people and criminals were sent to Australia to keep them out of trouble and out of England. After 7 years the prisoners were free to return to England, but most of them couldn't afford it. The first group of people sent to the land were called the First Fleet and landed in January in 1788 and built the first European settlement in Australia. That was the starting of the city Sydney. The country was called New South Wales until the 1820s, when it got its present name, Australia. When James Cook reached the new continent, he met the native people, the Aborigines. They had already been in the land for 40,000 years. Australia is famous for its wildlife. The most famous animals are probably the koala and the kangaroo. The kangaroo, or roo for short, has become Australia's national symbol. The word kangaroo was the first Aboriginal word in the English language. There are several species of kangaroos. The red kangaroos are the biggest ones and they are found in the middle of the country. A male can be 2 meters and weigh 90 kilos. The grey kangaroos are slightly smaller and mainly found in the east and south. The wallabies and the wallaroos are smaller relatives of the kangaroos. The red kangaroos can hop as fast as 70 kilometers per hour. The koala bear looks like a living teddy bear with its soft, thick grayish-brown fur and round ears. Koalas can measure up to 75 centimeters and weigh 14 kilos. Basically, koalas spend their lives eating eucalyptus leaves and sleeping in trees. Koalas can sleep 20 hours a day. Koalas rarely drink any water. They get most of the water from all the leaves they nibble. In fact, the name koala comes from an Aborigine word meaning no drink. There are over 126 million sheep in Australia, which use half the continent for grazing. They aren't dangerous, but you still need to be careful because there are some dangerous animals around. The most dangerous ants in the world are the Australian bulldog ants. They can be up to 4 centimeters long. You also have to watch out for extremely poisonous spiders, sharks, and snakes, not to mention the sea wasp, a jellyfish. This jellyfish is the world's most deadly stingy animal and it can weigh up to 2 kilos. Most people wear swimsuits or some other protection to feel safe and protect their bodies. If you are stung, you need to see a doctor. Fortunately, there is an anti-venom for the sting. Australia has more beaches than any other country. There are about 7,000 of them. The first life-saving club in the world was founded on Bondi Beach in Sydney on 1906. It has saved many surfers' lives. If you don't like to lie in the sun or surf, there is always the Great Barrier Reef to visit. It is the world's largest coral reef and it is located off the coast of Queensland. It stretches over 2,000 kilometers and consists of 900 islands and 3,000 coral reefs. A dangerous threat to the Great Barrier Reef, and to many other tropical reefs, is global warming. When temperature rises and the water remains too warm too long, the corals die. The Dingo Fence. It was built in the 1880s. The flag. There are 5 stars on the right side of the Australian flag which represent the Southern Cross. These 5 stars helped ships to navigate in the southern hemisphere in olden times. The flag is dark blue with the British Union flag, Union Jack, in the upper left corner. The British flag symbolises Australia's historic links with the UK and the Queen. There is also a large 7-pointed star under the Union flag. This star symbolises Australia's 6 states and the Northern Territory. Some people think that Australia should have a new flag without the British flag in the corner. The Australian flag is also very easily confused with New Zealand's flag, which is very similar. The Commonwealth of Australia is a monarchy. Queen Elizabeth II is Queen of Australia as well as of the UK and many other countries. Some of these countries are Canada, Jamaica, Barbados, and New Zealand. All of these independent countries were once British colonies. The government is led by the Prime Minister, who is the leader of the biggest party in the House of Representatives, one part of the Australian Parliament. In 1902, Australia was one of the first countries to give women the right to vote. But it wasn't until 1967 that the Aborigines, the first people in Australia, finally received the right to vote. If you are 18 years of age or older, you have to vote in the parliamentary and state elections. If you don't, you have to pay a fee. The Aborigines. The native population of Australia is called the Aborigines. They have lived in Australia for thousands of years. Many English words come from their language, for example, koala, kangaroo, boomerang, and didgeridoo. Everyone knows what a boomerang is, but what is a didgeridoo? It is a musical instrument made out of a long wooden cylinder. Most of the Aborigines died out after the Europeans arrived. No one knows how many the Aborigines were when the Europeans arrived. They may have been as many as 750,000. But the contact with the whites was a catastrophe. There were a lot of fights and many Aborigines were killed, or taken as slaves. Sadly enough, white settlers who killed Aborigines weren't punished until as late as 1838. But all Aborigines weren't killed directly by the whites. They died in the diseases the Europeans brought with them. Today there are about 275,000 Aborigines in Australia. Cities. There are 5 cities with more than 1 million inhabitants in Australia: Sydney, Melbourne, Brisbane, Perth, and Adelaide. Sydney is the biggest.